Welcome to 5 at 5 with Stone Law Offices. I'm attorney Brendan Bybee with 5 minutes on digital assets in your estate plan. Now, the first assets that you think of when you're dealing with estate planning are probably tangible things like your home, your cars, and you may, even though you largely deal with them in digital fashion, you probably think of your cash as tangible assets, but you've likely acquired a great deal of digital property that you may not have considered completely, and which you may not have considered as part of your estate plan or dealt with adequately there. Now, if you think about it, you can probably think of a number of assets that you have that are primarily digital in nature. You've got email accounts. You may have accounts where you've uploaded photos for storage and sharing. They may be social media accounts such as Instagram, where you have photos and comments, and blogs where you have done some writing. And of course, email, where you've written lots of personal correspondence and may also be saving photos and other personal writings in there. You also have services and perhaps music and video licenses for videos and MP3 music files that you've purchased over time. And all of these things add up, but they don't take up much space, and so we easily can overlook them when we're doing our estate planning and thinking about the assets that we have. Now, these assets, because they cover a wide swath of areas, because some of them are more personal in nature, some of them are productive in nature, and some of them are more consumer-oriented in nature, there are a lot of things to think about. Now, these assets may have value primarily just for you. In fact, they may be limited to you legally in terms of licenses that you've purchased, such as, again, digital files of music and video maybe that you've purchased for your own consumption, and which may not be technically able to be passed on to other people and transferred. But you've also produced things over time. You've taken pictures and uploaded those. You've written things, including personal emails. You may have a number of assets that way, which can have value. It may be value that is primarily sentimental, meaning there's personal correspondence between you and loved ones or other people. Perhaps you've passed some personal wisdom across in those that's valuable to certain people, and it may be part of the history that they share in with you. But it may also be economic in value. You may have works that you've prepared over time, and you may have, again, a diary type of material or content that you've written, even if it's in personal communications, that may be valuable in terms of turning out your production, your thoughts, your wisdom over time. And so there are a number of things that may be considered here, both from that personal value, that sentimental value, as well as economic value. And particularly if your profession was oriented with any kind of intellectual property, or you've collected some wisdom and perhaps in your field of endeavor and perhaps compiled some of those thoughts or put thoughts in a place where they could be compiled, they can have economic value long after you have passed away. At the same time, these may not just be valuable assets. They may be also dangerous assets, things that you may not want to have published, emails that may be sensitive, things that can disrupt family harmony after you've gone, things that perhaps you feel are better left buried in the past. And again, that's another issue where there are things that exist that can have both benefits and detriments, and which you may be able to exercise some control over, but which before you've seen this video, maybe you haven't thought about before. Now, when we're thinking about that, we're thinking about the value, and the danger of those assets and that information that you leave behind when you pass. There are some recommendations here. First of all, it's important that you do an inventory. Because you've acquired more than you've probably thought of, it may be good to sit down and go through what in general do you have, and maybe as you can drill down a little bit more, what specifically do you have and what kind of value does it have, and perhaps what kind of dangers are out there, things that you may not want to have disseminated. Think through those questions. Provide for the management of those things. So again, we're dealing with a lot of electronic assets, a lot of things that are in the cloud, in the net, as you might say, in online accounts, things that are protected by passwords. And you may lock those things up by not leaving any way to access those accounts after you pass away, or you may make it easier by providing that information. And in general, you should provide that information, put that in an inventory that can be left behind so that the people who need to access that information, who you want to access that information, are able to get into that. And particularly when you're dealing with things as simple as bank accounts that they need to deal with and administer, and perhaps cancel automatic payments and things like that in a timely manner. Now, in addition to that, in addition to just making sure that there's management in terms of being able to identify what those assets are and be able to access and use or protect those assets, it's important to understand that many of these things are controlled or governed by terms of service with the service provider for those assets. Again, that may come back to say in the form of videos that you've purchased. They may not be technically transferable assets to another person. They're only for your personal enjoyment. So there may be limitations there. There are services such as Facebook and Google have different programs and different ways in which you may be able to allow access to another person. Facebook may give options whether or not to lock that page or leave it as sort of a memorial page. So there are different options there. And that's also part of that estate planning, is going, okay, what do these accounts, these services offer in terms of naming somebody to have access to them or locking them up upon your death, and dealing with those things, as well as in your actual estate plan, dealing with who is going to control these assets, who's going to have access to them, who do I give rights to? And that is particularly important with, if you haven't left any instructions or you haven't left those passwords, who will that service be required to give access to those assets when you've gone? And have you given them instructions? Have you told them what assets do you want to have shared? What things do you want them to maintain privacy and perhaps destroy? If you haven't thought about these questions, if you don't know how your estate plan deals with those digital assets, if you haven't done this inventory and don't realize just how much wealth you've acquired in terms of that information and digital property, then please give us a call, come in, let's see what we need to do to get your digital estate plan in line and as buttoned up as the rest of your plan. Thanks.